Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Adventure Guide. And a few days ago, I shared a video about these cow mutilations that are taking place near Madisonville, Texas. The circumstances around these mutilations have people questioning whether or not aliens are real. I kid you not, these things are very stunning and very strange. I highly recommend after you watch this video to check that video out on this channel. What a lot of people don't know is that back in the late 60s and early 70s, the Madisonville area was a hotbed of UFO activity. And today, I'm going to share one of the more popular accounts that took place in 1975 with the Montgomery family. Jesse and Florence Montgomery had moved from the Houston area up to the country to get away from the city and its influences. They were a religious family of 3 daughters and 1 son, and they just wanted this wholesome life, so they moved up towards the Madisonville area. A number of UFO reports had began to spring up in the area, and the Montgomerys were none too happy about having these drunken neighbors making wild and crazy reports. Jesse Montgomery was one who was openly critical of all these eyewitnesses, commenting about what they must have been drinking. However, that all changed. One night in 1975, Jesse and his son Drew were driving home returning from church in Brazos, Texas. They crossed the Brazos Creek, and Jesse's son Drew noticed the strange light in the west, and it was acting kinda strange. Drew began to point to it and jokingly say, "Hey, look, there's a UFO right there." They kind of chuckled and joked as they watched this light that was flying low to the ground. However, it was getting closer and closer to them. Then the light-hearted joking stops abruptly, and they start to grow concerned because the light is actually moving right towards them. There were no colors on the craft, it was just pure white lights. Then they looked out, as it appeared this encounter was just a helicopter or something of the sort, as it disappeared in the woods near Iron Creek. Just as the chuckling and joking was about to resume, the light reappears. This time, the lights land on the road in front of them and they barricade their route home. Jesse had to slam on his brakes. There was no way to get around this thing. And this was no helicopter. Jesse was filled with fear and uncertainty, but Jesse is a Texan and fear puts him in a fight mode. He takes his foot off the brakes and he guns it, steering right at the UFO, playing a game of chicken. Believe it or not, Jesse wins. This thing lifts up off the road and takes off. Then in the distance, they can see their home and the UFO reappears and goes straight there. It was as if it knew where they lived or had read their minds and knew where they were going. Drew began to plead and beg his father just to go straight on up to Madisonville, but Jesse refused. As they pulled in the driveway, they could clearly see it had landed in the backyard. Jesse stopped the car, opened the door, got out, and told Drew to stay in the car. Drew watched his father run into the house, and he remembers being able to hear this loud humming coming from the other side of the house from whatever this thing was. Then Drew looked over to see his father come out of the house with a gun and boldly goes right towards the UFO. Jesse was about to let a fury of Texas lead go flying into the lights, but Drew said they seemed to know what was coming. Quote, "My dad comes out with a gun, and he was planning on shooting at the UFO, and it was like they knew what was going to happen. The thing picks up, takes a right turn, and goes up the hill into the back part of the property." The UFO had left. Soon after, news reporters were coming to the house, and MUFON showed up to take an official report. Then, jumping forward to the 2000s, Jesse's granddaughter, Taylor, said she felt like something was always watching her when she would go out to the deer stand in the mornings. To the left of the house is a hunting cabin, and behind the house is a pond. Taylor used to love going out there and looking up at the stars and gazing at them. One night she began to feel very uneasy, like something was watching her. And then she heard something unexplainable. There was some sort of noise that was out of place. There was something there that was making this clicking sound. And this thing was large enough to snap limbs. Nothing more came of that night. However, one evening, Drew and his daughter Taylor were out at his dad's property at the little hunting cabin, and they were sitting down to a dinner of chili dogs together and just kind of talking, and all of a sudden, there's these 3 loud knocks on the side of the cabin. They look at each other like, what was that? And just as they're trying to complete their question, 3 knocks on the other side of the cabin. Well, this is 100% for sure that someone or something is out there. Drew grabbed his rifle and went out on the porch, but no one was there. People do not knock on hunting cabins in Texas. The rest of the night went along smoothly, so Drew and his daughter went to bed. But Taylor was awoken around 3:30 in the morning to a loud ruckus. Here's how she described the incident on These Woods Are Haunted. Quote, "My head was 4 feet away from what I was hearing. It was someone sprinted back and forth on the porch. And it was kind of a sprint, walk, sprint, walk, back and forth. And this was probably going on for about 5 minutes. It was pretty big, it had 2 legs, and it wasn't wearing shoes." Taylor laid in bed frozen in terror and knew if she looked out the window, it would scar her for the rest of her life if she saw it. So she just laid still and listened, trying to figure out what to do. Hey guys, we'll be right back to the story, but real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to the band, How to Live with Robots. You can find a link to the band in the description below. The timing between the steps and how fast it went back and forth from one end of the cabin to the other was too long of a gait and too fast to be a human. Taylor began to try to shake her dad awake, but he would not come to. Taylor panicked and began to scream, which woke Drew up. They grabbed their guns and they both went outside with flashlights and began to hear things down by the pond. They spent about an hour trying to figure out what it was. When they would turn their flashlights off, the thing would move and make noise. But as soon as they would turn them on, it would freeze and it could not be seen. Drew gave up and began walking back to the cabin when a rock came flying in his direction and landed 2.5 feet from him. Drew turns and he scans the area with his light, but he still sees nothing. So he walks back to the cabin and, quote, "I don't make it to the cabin before another rock comes over my shoulder and hits between me and the cabin." The rock was about 1.5 to 2 pounds in weight. Drew begins to panic and wants to fire a shot, but doesn't want to wake up his parents or the neighbors across the highway. Drew and Taylor went into the cabin, and the rest of the night went by quietly. When Jesse Montgomery died in 2015, Florence moved from the house, and the house was passed on to a grandson. Because of all the events that took place there, Drew nor his kids made any claims to the land or cabin. I also found this report filed on a Sunday of May 29th, 2011. I was going north on I-45 around 1:30 a.m., May 29th, 2011. I was in the right-hand lane. There was an area of grass to my right, then trees. To my left was the other traffic lanes, a grass-covered median, and then the traffic lanes for the southbound traffic. Traffic was very light, no vehicles were very close to me. All of a sudden there was a very bright flashing light that seemed to come from above my car. I leaned forward, looked up, and out my windshield. There was a small black circular object about 15 feet above my car. It had matched my speed, around 70 miles per hour, and was flashing about once a second. There were no other lights except the flashing one, and there was no noise. The object stayed just in front of and above my car for 3 or 4 minutes, then slowed down and went to the truck behind me. I have checked the news in that area north of Huntsville, a few miles south of Madisonville, but haven't seen any other reports of this sighting. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode, but if you look on my channel, you'll see that I did a video on the cow mutilations of the area, and I also, a number of years back, went and did an investigation at the Woodbine Hotel there in Madisonville, which has a very creepy story to it. Be sure to check those out. Also, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and until next time, we're off on another adventure. God bless.